Hi, so thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself.
So my name is Kirsten Jones. I'm a peak performance and sports parenting coach. I help parents and their athletes figure out, we all have limiting beliefs. We all have things that get in our way. I help people identify what it is that's getting in their way, holding them back, and releasing it. I also have a podcast called #Raising Athletes, and am the author of my first book called Raising Empowered Athletes, which just came out August 8th from Triumph Books. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So it is actually your book, Raising Empowered Athletes, that brought me to you. So can you tell me why you felt it was important to write Raising Empowered Athletes?
So I'm a mother. I was a high school athlete. I was in the 70s, raised in the 70s, where back in the day, we all played whatever was in front of us for that season. Nobody thought about what it was going to do for your life or career or anything, and you just enjoyed it. I ended up becoming a college athlete. I played basketball and volleyball and track in high school, and then played volleyball in college. And then once I got out of college, I was like, for the first time, not getting recruited to do something in my life. And I was trying to figure out what am I going to do? What would be natural for me to do? And I found Nike. Ironically, they were just setting up shop in Eastern Europe. And so I was on the front end of helping establish getting in and helping get the brand out to all of Eastern European countries, which was amazing in the mid 90s. And then I became a mom. And when you get pregnant, everyone hands you what to expect when you're expecting. And you get so excited as a mom because you think, I have all the answers. And it makes you just thrilled and comforted to know that you're doing it right. Because that's what we all long for, is to know that we just want to know, like, where's the guidebook? Where's the rule book? I mean, remember with the delivery of my first child in Amsterdam, and thinking, how are they just giving me this kid? Like, don't they know I don't know what I'm doing? And then fast forward 5 years later, you're on the sidelines of Kick and Chase. And these parents are like, well, you're not going to do this rec thing, are you? Like, you're going to do club. Like, we're all doing club, and you don't have a private coach. And the FOMO, that fear of missing out, of, am I behind? Am I doing it wrong? And where's the book? Where's the manual? Where is the guide that helps us? And having been an athlete all my life, having worked at Nike, married an athlete, and now I was raising my own, I was looking around for the book that I really just could never find, which was not about how to raise a pro athlete. And that's what people misconstrued when I was first pitching this. They thought, oh, you're writing the book about how to... No. How do you raise a kid that's going to go through this experience and take all of the good and probably mostly the bad and use it to grow and become and evolve into who they are meant to be, whether it's on the pitch or in the pool or not?
Yeah, so one of the things I love about the book is that you highlight how sports can be a part of a kid's life rather than sports being a kid's life. But I would say that on the whole, you're describing a world of youth sports that's, pretty unfamiliar to me. Can you describe, just in a little more detail, for those who, may not have kids involved in athletics, like, when does it start? Who's running programs outside of school? And how do these out of school programs relate to scholastic athletic programs?
So maybe it helps if I give you a little context of how we got here, and then I'll tell you about what's going on now. But basically, in the 60s and 70s, 26% of women worked outside of the home. By the mid 70s or early 80s, now more than double that had started working outside of the home. So now you have two working parents. So you have, what basically is the start of latchkey kids. Kids are coming home. There's nothing to do. There's no parent there. In the late 70s, actually early 80s, 1983, a report came out that said, America, you're behind educationally. You're not doing this right. Our kids are not the leading, the most knowledgeable kids in the world, and we're falling behind. And parental foes started kicking in. And then at the same time, ESPN is born. In 1979, ESPN comes online, and now you can watch sports 24/7, and you can see these athletes, and you see little 2-year-old Tiger Woods showing up on the course, and you see Nadia Comaneci, and you see Wayne Gretzky. And so I don't think there was like an aha moment. I don't think anybody like just one day realized this could be a thing. But, eventually you get, the 10,000 hour rule. And so you kind of had this combination of parents needing to be more involved because there wasn't any there, they needed to put some structure in because they're both working. So they start implementing some organized sports. Back in our day, you'd sign up for the YMCA and you'd probably pay $50 and your kid would play for 3 months. And, then eventually we got to where we're adding the dads in. In 1981, Adam Walsh is abducted and 38 million people tune in to find out that the world is a really scary place and we can't just let our kids go play in the street. So like there was this swirling of events that were kind of happening. And then again, with the more income and dad saying, well, I played baseball, I could be a coach, they start getting involved. And I think it's all out of goodwill and it's all out of the best intentions. I don't think anybody's was necessarily setting out to like, but when they start seeing, at 10,000 hours and I can, Johnny cannot just play middle school and high school, but he could actually play in college. And, there are things called scholarships. It started to be, the dial just started slowly getting turned up. To your question today, what's happening is I live in Los Angeles. There are a lot of places in America now where you can't even find a rec team for anything north of 10 years old, which is crazy. Like, what about the 15-year-old kid? I was doing my book talk the other night and the mom's like, my daughter's 13. She wants to play soccer. She just wants to play. She doesn't care about playing in college. She just wants, where's the team that she can just sign up and go have fun? And unfortunately, in a lot of these places, you have to sign up for your school team. That's about all that they're offering, because now clubs, it's all pay to play, and kids are paying up to, parents are paying up to, the average is like $12,000, not average, up to $12,000 for youth sports per year per child. So all of your disposable income, there's no more family vacations because, my son plays basketball. He gets 36 hours off at Christmas this year, right? There's no more spring break. There's no more summer break, because if you want to make the top travel team, you got to be there June, July, and August. So it's shifted. And, as parents buy into that, then, well, if Johnny doesn't play at 10, then he won't make the team at 12. If he doesn't, so the FOMO of, you got to buy in early or he'll be behind. And it's gotten out of control.
So rec teams are being replaced by, more expensive, more competitive club teams. And then these club teams then feed into, perhaps high school teams. So I've just seen with like my extended family and with some of my friends that kids athletics, as you said, consume a huge amount of kid and family time. You talk about the investment up to $12,000 a year, but what else are families investing in their kids participating in sports in this way?
Yeah, it's time, it's all of your resources, and it's an emotional investment for the parents. I was just with, actually my son's getting ready to go to college, and I was talking to a mom about the book, and she said, when my son stopped playing baseball, I was in pain because those were all my friends. And, again, it starts so young that there also becomes, instead of America going to church, that becomes your church. Like, that becomes your community. Those become your people. So that's how you identify yourself. We're the dragons. That's how we become, to know ourselves and identify ourselves. And, it's the irony is I go to any city in America, whether it's Dallas or Boston or Buffalo or LA or Missoula, Montana, everybody says the same thing. I don't know about where you are, but here parents are crazy, And so it's completely pervaded. It's a 20 billion with a B dollar industry, larger than the NFL. So we've created a whole of youth sports, which 70% of kids by age 13 are dropping out altogether now. Why? Because they're not having any fun. Why? Because there's all this pressure to perform and to win and to compete. And when I'm looking to mom and dad and all I really want is them to tell me I'm enough And the message I'm getting is, well, you got thrown out at second and, whatever, we lost. And what does that mean? And, like that pressure that I know parents don't mean to send down to their kid, but comes through what they do. They say, you know what? I don't need this. I would rather go hang with my friends or play a video game or hopefully do something positive, but not do sports. And what is that leading to? Depression, overwhelm. What we know is kids who are still active at 23 you've set that habit. Now you're going to be an athlete for life. And I don't mean competitive athlete. I mean, you're going to want to go hiking and you're going to go biking and you're going to see yourself. You and I spoke about it the other day as, I'm going to try a new sport because I'm curious. Versus what I hear now are some kids of that coach beat my son in submission about soccer that he has never picked up a soccer ball since, and now he won't ever play again. And that is sad. Like that's a very sad state when it's not only not a ticket to anything, but it's actually helping people opt out altogether.
So, these parents that, you have had experiences with, they're very invested, right, in giving their kids these experiences, playing sports, beginning at a very young age. What is just observationally, what is the desired outcome? Like, what is it that they're hoping for?
I think we all wish for our kids to carry the torch to another level, maybe that we couldn't have achieved. The athletes, the parents that I meet that were pro athletes or played at collegiate level, I find are the ones that lean back the furthest. And by that, I mean, Steve Kerr, Golden State Warriors coach, his middle child signed him up for soccer, middle of the game, he's laying there on his back picking daisies. He goes out to his son and says, "What do you think, buddy? You want to go get some ice cream?" And his son's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I guess soccer isn't for you." And he goes, when he talks, he's like, "I know what it takes to play. I am not about to force my kid if that is not his thing." Yet there are some parents who don't know. And I don't think it's out of ill will. It's, wow, this could be an option. And he shows early interest. And I wonder, and this is completely anecdotal, but you have this cottage business industry of coaches, of private coaches that have come up, right? So I'm paying you $150 an hour to tell me my 6-year-old is a prodigy in soccer. I hear that as a parent, then I'm all in, right? Oh, yeah, he's got such great ball handling skills. Now I'm thinking like, so how much of it is misguided even to begin with? Because the coaches need to pay their bills, and the more kids they have sign up for their private sessions or for their team, the better off they are. So what downside is it for them to take more players and tell everybody they're great? And then the parents buy into that. And again, they don't know because they never played. So I don't think it's kind of like if you signed up for chess and somebody said, "Oh, wow, your kid's really good at this," you would be, "Oh, that's amazing. I'm all in." In fact, I have a story in the book about a dad I met when my oldest was in 3rd grade and at the basketball game, and all the parents were like on the sidelines, like, cheering and standing up and following the night, the ball, wherever the ball was, the whole 10 boys were following the court. And this one dad, like leaning back as far as he could in the stands. And finally I said to him, so this must not be your first basketball game. He said, "This is my 5th child." And I said, "Aha. And what have you learned?" And he said later, he told me the story that his oldest son was a great golfer. He said, "I love to golf. We would go to the driving range. Timmy just took off. He was hitting balls and he was doing really well. And he started taking lessons." He goes, "I had no master plan. I was not like, oh, I'm raising a golfer." But he showed interest. It's something I liked. Then we started, we got to 7 or 8. We started doing the junior tour. The next thing I know, my wife and I and the 4 other kids are going to all these events, wherever the events are. He loved it. He's like, he loved it the whole way. We loved it. It was a great thing until it wasn't. When Stanford came calling and he had a full ride offer to Stanford. And he said, like a month or 2 before he's supposed to go to Stanford to fulfill the dream that we've all had since he was 5. And he comes to my wife and I and he says, "I'm done." And we said, "Excuse me?" He said, I'm not going to Stanford and I'm not playing golf." And again, so I don't think it's not all, I have the story of the book of Todd Marinovich, and there's some dads, and Andre Agassi's dad, and there's some parents, Steffi Graf's dad, whereas like they set out, the Serena Williams sisters, right? They set out with a plan. I don't think most people do that. But what happens when you get caught up in the, like, wow, this is really exciting, and he's good, and he seems to like it. Mm-hmm. Are you prepared when he pivots and not knowing when that will come?
So independent of their parents, what have you observed it is that most kids, like kids and adolescents, want to get out of playing sports?
I think like anything, it depends on the kid. I coach 9 and 10-year-old girls volleyball, and it's so fascinating to me, about 3 or 4 girls on any roster of 12 will be completely locked in, and every single practice they're watching everything you do, and they're listening for feedback, and they're taking all the feedback. And there's probably well over a half of them that, again, the parents needed an activity and the girl said, my friend's doing it, and they signed up, and that's fine, right? And they're trying it. And what I say to parents of young athletes, like, try everything. And the only requirement is you finish what you start. You sign up for the season in the beginning, you finish at the end. At the end, you have a meeting and say, hey, what did you think, Julie? Julie says, I don't like that. Okay, great. What would you like to try next? And it's not, again, it's not that it's a bad thing. It's like, that's how you learn. That's how you grow. So it depends on the kid, but then you'll see those 1 or 2. I've got a client right now. She's a sophomore in high school. She wants to play in college. She sets the meeting. She shows up every homework assignment I give her. She is so locked in. She goes and watches video. I can send her podcasts. She's hungry. But like anybody who's found their passion, whether it's music or arts or science or anything, it's such a beautiful thing when you see somebody who is like, wow, this is what I meant to do at this stage of my life.
But you would say that based on your experience, right, this is not an everyday occurrence. These kids are few and far between.
I live in LA, which is, again, probably higher than most because there's a lot of pro athletes here and their kids. And so yes, you're probably getting a larger range than most. But yeah, most kids, I think they want to be active and they want to be social. Most girls care more about the color of the ribbon in their hair than they care about, whether the team won or lost. And of course, that's the most important thing I say to the parents. The only 6 words your kid needs to hear you say, I love to watch you play. That's it. And so many parents, well, this and that coach stinks, and we're going to go to a different team, and that you are awful. And then that's when it erodes. And P.S., as I mentioned in the book, it's happening in other parts of their life too, right? That's the college cheating scandal. That's message, that subliminal message of you are not enough. So I need to jump in. My ego is involved, and I'm going to go in and talk to that teacher. I'm going to go in and talk to that principal. We're going to change schools. You got an F. It couldn't possibly be your fault. And so that's the gift that you're going to get from sport. Just like when they don't do the homework assignment and they get an F, what did you learn? What happened? I don't know. Well, let's unpack that and allow them to learn for it. And we are living in this snowplow, drone, helicopter, pick your metaphor, climate where we're not allowing them to fail and learn. And when they learn is when they can decide, gosh, it was in that moment that I realized I really loved it, or I didn't. And either of those answers are great because you're just getting going.
Right.
There's a great class at Stanford University. I think it's still being taught, but the book came out about 5 years ago called Designing Your Life. And I had read the book and I loved it. And one of my best friends went to Stanford and she's like, look, they're coming to speak here in LA. So she dragged me and I walk into this ballroom and there's 500 Stanford grads in this room, all trying to figure out what to do with their life. And you're like, wait, you went to Stanford. Aren't you guys that wrote the book, right? No, the answer is life is meandering. Life is wayfinding. Life is just because you liked it at 8 or 12 doesn't mean you're going to like it at 15 or 20, right? So parents, check in with your kid along the way. I have one client who he loved baseball. He wanted to play UCLA baseball since he was 5. By 15, he was over it. And he's like, when I would meet with him, he's like, I just can't let my mom know because it would break her heart. And I don't think the mom, again, she was okay with him not going for that dream, but she thought she thought she was just supporting it when really, it had died a while ago. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really like the way, again, that you highlight in the book through a lot of your stories, what life lessons and what character building experiences kids athletics can be, both for the kids and for the parents. I think that's really important. And that's a really valuable opportunity for people to have. So I do want to kind of pivot a little to, we were kind of talking about kids and adolescents, but I do want to talk about college athletics, because this is something that I have literally no experience with. But I know that this is kind of viewed as the golden ring that high school athletes are reaching for. It would be really helpful for me in understanding this concept of lost opportunity when you talk about trans athlete inclusion, to break down this system a little bit more so that I can understand it. I obviously know that it varies across sports. I think that people have some pop culture insights into what men's basketball recruiting looks like and what men's football recruiting looks like. But let's talk about women, right? Women's sports, since this is something that you have, both personal and professional experience with. What does the recruiting process look like? When does it start? What role does the student have in, what schools may be considering them, expressing interest? Tell me a little bit about that.
So college recruiting definitely varies by sport. I'm most entrenched in basketball and volleyball, but I know a bit about soccer and a few other sports. But basically, I want to say it was in 2017. It used to be that, and what you started to see was fifth graders, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds. There's a case of a 10-year-old 10 years ago that got an offer from North Carolina to play soccer. So it was starting to get where they were recruiting them younger and younger and younger, because there was this feeding frenzy of, if we don't get the talent first, then we'll be last. But, my joke is, my 17-year-old doesn't know what she wants for dinner tonight. How would she possibly know? Or in the case, 14-year-old would know what they would want to do 4, 8, 10 years later, right? So it got to be really, really crazy. So in 2017, the NC2A came out and said, you cannot recruit athletes before June 15th before their junior year. So June 15th, apparently there's, people are waiting by their phones for their phone to ring. And the best athletes will be taking numbers. And I've heard jokes of, well, we just see what all the calls that come in are, and then we prioritize who we're going to call back. Maybe that is happening for the top 1%, but essentially you can start reaching out to coaches. You can start going to camps at any age, and you can email them and send them. You can go on and fill out their recruiting form. They just can't respond to you until you're eligible to be recruited. And then as soon as you're eligible to be recruited, they can start actively recruiting. They can respond by email, but they can't actively start picking up the phone and calling you. But of course, that's happening. That's the official, right? But they can talk to your club coach, or they can talk to your high school coach. So there's the official version, and then there's what's actually happening. It's still happening you're seeing. Again, I saw a girl the other day who's foregoing her senior year of high school and going straight to USC to play volleyball, which is pretty unheard of in women's. That happens for men. You see that with basketball and those kind of things. But now you're seeing that even for women, where they're saying, oh, I'm going to forego my high school, which I'm not even sure how that worked out. That feels like you had planning in order to be able to graduate early, to be able to be eligible for college, right?
So how big of a factor is a student's own expressed interest in, where they may end up playing sports in college?
That depends on your level, right, and how good you are and your connections. A lot of it comes back to relationships. I was actually on a call with a former Olympian yesterday, and she's 45, and she's like, I just basically, I waited. It made me laugh. She said, I got letters from every single school in the country. In fact, my goal was to get a letter from so I got every letter of the alphabet. I was like, wow, she must have been really good. Right. And I mean, that's amazing. I think that's, for Bronny James, LeBron's son, probably had that happen, and a handful of other 5 stars. But for most athletes that are even in the top, let's call it the top 100, the top 100 athletes who will commit before their junior year, even that takes concerted effort. Now you're sending videos, you set up a profile. I mean, the better you are, probably the less heavy lifting you have to do, because you can, depending on the sport, it's, golf, you just send in your scores, swimming, you send in your times, and they're recruiting you based on that.
Okay. So that's actually a good segue to my next question, which is beyond performance. What else goes into identifying desirable college athletes? Because this is something that you address in your book, that it is not just about performance.
So yes, and this is so fun for me when I have just gone through it twice with my sons getting recruited. So I've talked to probably, over 50, 75 college basketball coaches, plus my connections through volleyball. And almost every coach will say, they're not looking at the score. And that's what most of the parents are obsessed. Well, we didn't win that game, and now it means my kid's not going to get recruited. They're looking for athleticism. So you can watch a kid probably for 5 minutes and decide whether they're athletic enough or not. And then they're looking for a lot of the intangibles. Their body language, their eye contact, how good of a teammate are they? How, what are their attitude? Are they coachable? Like, I've talked to a few coaches that are like, in fact, I think I can mention his name, the Penn basketball coach, is amazing, Steve Donahue. And he told me a story of how he went and recruited this 5-star kid. He would show up at the gym at 6 a.m., what they call open runs at prep schools, and this 5-star, and he was kind of giving half effort, and he wasn't shaking his buddy's hands, and he was getting out of the drill first. And he goes, and then, by my 3rd or 4th visit to go try to recruit this 5-star, this kid next to him, touching every line, going up and high-fiving everybody, asking, what I could do, coach, getting feedback. He's like, I stopped recruiting the 5-star. I started recruiting the one. He goes, the one I want is the one that I know every day in the gym is going to give me his best. And that's what I need to succeed, my culture to succeed, and for us to succeed as a team.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to highlight. And you do a good job of that in the book. So again, this is very difficult for me to quantify, but how scarce or abundant are athletic scholarships? And what is the range of financial support that athletes receive? What is even feasible for not the top 0.001%, but, the rest to kind of have in mind?
I don't have the exact data in front of me right now, so totally transparent, but in general, pre-COVID, right? Less than 7% of kids, D1, D2, D3, NAIA at any level would get recruited to play in college.
And those are 7% of kids that played sports.
Sports, okay. Right? And for D1, it was less than 3%. That's pre-COVID. Now with COVID, and what happened was the NC2A said it's not fair that everybody had to sit out. So everybody got a COVID year, which meant you now had kids, you saw a lot of records being broken in the last 2 years because kids got a free year of eligibility. Some schools actually kind of played a half a season and then they got another year, or they got a grad year, right? And so now you have kids who are breaking scoring records and rebounding records and whatever, because they've basically been able to extend their career by a year or two. And what's happened is on the bottom of that, now these 17, 18-year-olds, and my middle son was a victim of that, which is he's trying to get a college scholarship, but we've already got a full roster because we're going to keep the 23, 24-year-old who we know versus going after the 18, 17, 18-year-old we don't. In fact, we met with University of Oregon coach, and he said, no offense, but the transfer portal is also another really big thing. So in addition to them getting the COVID year, then also the NC2A said, now everybody, you used to have to say, I would like to get off of this out of my scholarship. And there was a big, formal procedure they had to go through. And then you'd have to sit out an entire year before you could play. Now the NC2A, because of COVID, did away from that. So I can stop playing for Montana State on a Friday, and the next week I can be playing at Arizona State. So that also opened this aperture and parents who say, well, my kid's not happy here, we're going to go somewhere else. So the transfer portal became a huge thing. I know, like Penn State 2 years ago, the men's basketball team, the entire team got in the portal, right? Like, and then anytime a coach gets fired or a coach leaves, so you're having this huge churning of players. And when we met with the Oregon coach, he said, no offense, but I can go into the portal. She goes, I'm sure you're a good player, but I can go to the portal and get you, but you with 3 years of experience. So why would I invest in you? Because I got to win today. So go do something somewhere else. And if you get good enough, let me know. So again, now you talk about the professionalization, like now it's that you're like a free agent. And you see kids going to 3 and 4 and 5 different schools in 5 years and not graduating ever, because every time you transfer, it's not like you just take your credits with you and now I'm getting a degree here. And in 1 year, most schools, you have to minimum of be at a school for 2 years in order to get a degree. So
Right.
You have these kids thinking, well, I don't need a degree anyway. I'm going to go play pro, which of course is 0.001% will make it pro of the 3% that are playing D1, right? So it's such rarefied air that if you really think I'm signing my 5-year-old up because they've got a lot of talent, because we're going to get that D1 scholarship, and the math is ridiculous. What you will invest in the lifetime, 5 to 15 to 20, you could definitely invest your money better and obviously have college paid for, and probably have a few more vacations and family time than saying we're betting all of our money that this is going to work out.
So for the vast majority of just purely average, youth athletes, best case scenario, what is it that they walk away with at the end of their, athletic career at the ripe old age of, 18 or 21?
Everything. I mean, that's why you may think from the last answer, I'm advocating for not playing. And in fact, it's the opposite, because what you get out of learning how to be on a team and learning how to collaborate and learning how to win and learning how to lose. I do the podcast with Susie Walton, who was formerly married to Bill Walton. And she tells the story that when the one son was not starting because the dad of the other player was the coach and he had to come off the bench, and Bill said to him, that's the best lesson you're going to ever learn. You got to learn how to come off the bench. And sure enough, a few years later, when he, makes it to Arizona, then makes it to the Lakers, and he's coming off the bench for the Lakers, what a gift, right? But if everything is about, I'm the best, I'm only going to be here if I'm the best, you're missing out on what the lessons are. And P.S., you're probably going to play for 1 or 2 coaches you really don't like, and you're not going to agree with their philosophy. You're as a parent or as a player. And as much as you like to say that's an anomaly, it's probably not. You're going to have a bad professor, and then you're going to have a bad boss, and you may have a bad partner. And those are the gifts that you're getting by doing this, because the whole journey is about learning who you are and what it is you want. And the more, like I like to say to parents, I love the analogy of an oak tree. And the deeper our roots are into the ground, we eventually find that aqueduct beneath us. So that not when the wind blows, when the thunders open, when the lightning happens, we're grounded. And we're not, well, this isn't fair and that's not fair and I'm going to, no. Oh, wow, that's interesting. What do you want to do about this? Mm-hmm. Well, I know the coach doesn't like me or doesn't, but I really want to play. That's a great choice. That's your choice, versus us fixing and feeling the need to jump in the hole with them versus allowing them to make that decision. And it's hard. I'm doing it right now. My oldest one is pivoting. He's graduating early and going to D3. The D1 just wasn't the right fit. Oh, well, What I want him to get out of this is I am enough and I value myself, that I'm going to go somewhere that does want me and need me and value me. And that's who I want him to choose in a mate. And that's who I want him to choose in a boss or in a career. And if he learns that right now, that is worth every dollar and moment of, road trip and 5 a.m. workout, because that's why I chose empowered. We want our kids to have agency over who they are, that we're not waiting for somebody to validate us. We're not waiting for somebody to tell us, oh, you're enough, or that we're living in this external validation culture where you get these kids that, unless it's on TikTok, unless it's on Instagram, that it's, a perfect life, I must not be doing it right. No, in fact, you're probably doing it right when you're going through some adversity, because life is hard, life is messy. And when you get through the other side, you'll be like, oh, I survived that. What did I learn?
Yeah.
And now what do I want to do?
Yeah. And I love the way you highlight how sports can be a place for kids to, in a structured way, learn how to confront difficult experiences and move through them, right? And that parents have to get out of the way. That's something that you mentioned quite a bit, that parents need to get out of the way and let kids have those experiences in athletics. So, I've talked to you about my project and kind of what my focus is, which is, the inclusion of trans kids in sport. And I'm curious, again, you are someone who has a lot of experience in a lot of different types of spaces with different ages. What impact do you think the universal inclusion of trans kids would have on athletics in the K through 12 space?
According to the Hastings report, which you had forwarded me, 1/5 of 1% of athletes that are competing in youth sports are trans. It's nothing. It's like saying, the kids who are 7 feet tall and above are not allowed to play. It's irrelevant, and it's so important for us to be inclusive. They've got enough going on. I don't think anybody sets out to say, I'm going to do this so I can further my athletic career. No, I'm just trying to be a human that's, again, wants to know I'm enough and loved and accepted, and who knows what each of them are going through on the inside and at home, and whether they're accepted in their community or not. Absolutely, 100%. Kids should be embracing and allowing people to be who they are. And when we do that, we're not all going to be, again, black or white or female or male or whatever, 7 feet tall or 5 feet tall, but we all add value. We all have gifts. And if we think that only certain gifts are allowed, we're losing as a society. And it's the saddest thing to me to think that that is acceptable.
So I definitely hear you saying that you don't see any potential for negative impact for if trans kids are more universally included in athletics. Do you think there are any positive benefits of greater inclusivity?
100%. Because just like the kid that the transfer student that comes from France or Ecuador, and what you learn about their culture and their language, the same thing, what you're going to learn. I mean, I played for a lesbian coach in high school for volleyball, and then in college. And I remember when I was getting recruited, I remember one of the coaches said, well, you're not going to want to go to that school because she's a lesbian, right? And like that, people were discriminating out loud about a choice I was going to make. Was like, okay, well, I'm definitely not going to your school. Whereas if, and P.S. I chose the woman who was in my wedding, by the way, and is one of my best friends, and I speak to every week because she's a good human. And that's who I want my kids and I want to be surrounded by. I'm choosing the best people. And I would love to say, I was actually listening to a fabulous podcast about bias, and we all like to think we don't have biases, but we all have implicit biases. And even though we're like, no, I don't. Yes, you do, and unless we openly address and talk and welcome all, we're going backwards.
Right.
Which I know is a whole bigger discussion.
Yeah, but that's such a good point. I mean, that's definitely what research has shown, is that implicit bias is most effectively eradicated through exposure. And if we give, all kids broader exposure to all kinds of people, and normalize, a diversity of, gender identities and experiences, we help to eradicate those implicit biases, and which is, again, one of, the cultural benefits and the societal benefits that sport can bring. And I think, it really goes hand in hand with the other types of developmental opportunities that can be provided to young people in the context of sport.
Yes. And if you say, we're only going to play with girls who have blonde hair, like they're the only ones that we're going to allow you to play with. Like, when you think about that, of course, that sounds insane. But yet when we say, oh, well, they don't have this, they're not exactly the way we are, like, that's not the way we as, again, people and evolution and allowing us to be better than the sum of the parts. 1 + 1 is 3 when we all learn and grow from each other.
Well, thank you so much. I will provide a link to your book, and I did finish reading it this week. I really loved it. And, even though my kids don't play sports, I took a lot away from it. And I think I gained a new perspective, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Oh, thank you, Sara. This has been just a beautiful conversation and getting to know you. And yeah, this really isn't a book about raising athletes. This is about how do we become better versions of ourselves. I think we all put on the mask ourselves first, then we can be more present for our kids. And, I'm saying goodbye to my second one this weekend, right? Like, it goes like that. We think it's going to be this long journey. And I heard after 18, 90% of the time you spend together is gone. When you think about it that way, like, my job is done. You're always a parent, yes, but being present for them. And I love the idea that when they go through the dark night of the soul, instead of looking at it as you look at it as oh, good. We get to go through this together so that you figure out the tools that you're going to need. So when you are across the country or even just around the corner, it isn't this umbilical cord that I'm fixing all your problems. You're fixing them for yourself because you went through it. So thank you for having me. This has been really wonderful.
Thanks.